Will the committee please escort the governor forward?
Thank you. Thank you.
Members of the General Assembly, it is my distinguished pleasure to present to you the Governor of the great state of Tennessee, the Honorable Bill Lee.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Very gracious. Lieutenant Governor McNally and Speaker Sexton, Speaker Pro Tem Hale, Speaker Pro Tem Marsh, members of the 112th General Assembly, justices, constitutional officers, and to my family, thank you for being here today. It means a lot. I first and especially want to acknowledge someone who has for the last 3 years been a steadfast partner to me in this journey. She's also been a faithful friend to Tennesseans, especially underserved Tennesseans, through her Tennessee Serves initiative. I'm so proud of the work that she has done for Tennesseans, hundreds of thousands of meals and backpacks and shoes for children and Gold Star families and those with disabilities and homeless. Tennesseans are proud of you, and I'm proud of you, our First Lady, Maria Lee. A spirit of humble service matters in times of trial. It matters in times of prosperity. And so I also want to thank members of my staff and members of the cabinet who are here tonight, who have served Tennesseans tirelessly through the last year. I'm grateful for every one of you, and I thank every one of you. Thank you. To everyone else here and everyone listening across the state, it is the highest honor that I have to serve you as your governor. And I am grateful that you allow me to serve in this position. We stand here today in a different place than we were last year, but our gratitude to Tennesseans hasn't changed. Tennesseans, you have kept this state open and moving forward. And Tennesseans, like members of the National Guard, who've met the worst of circumstances with grit and yet also provided comfort. nurses and healthcare workers who've cared for the sick, and teachers and administrators who've taught our children, troopers and police officers and sheriff's deputies who patrol our roads and keep our neighborhoods safe, small businesses that have kept their doors open, and workers who've worked extra hours to keep our economy moving. You all, Tennesseans, are what makes Tennessee exceptional. Thank you. Last June, we commenced Untold Tennessee, a celebration of how the ordinary makes us extraordinary, to commemorate 225 years of Tennessee statehood. Folks along the way this year have shared with me the deep connection that they feel to Tennessee. Folks like my friend Wally Childers, whose family owns a century farm, Childers Farms in West Tennessee, where they've been farming crops, thousands of acres of crops, since 1906. Wally and Tracy are with us here tonight, and we thank you for representing generations of Tennesseans who have helped to make Tennessee what it is today. Wally and Tracy, will you please stand? You know, for 225 years, Tennessee's been a beacon to those who wanted to plant their roots here. They needed a frontier to build their American dream. And in 1965, the General Assembly recognized that. And they passed a resolution to adopt a state slogan, Tennessee, America at its best. Over the years, leaders have reminded Tennesseans that America at its best is not just a slogan, it's our North Star. However, America at its best means something different today than it did when it was adopted in 1965. Even different than it has over the last decade. I think about what was going on in our country in 1965 and the very real tension of becoming a more perfect union. There were moments of great optimism with the passage of the Voting Rights Act. There were moments of tremendous innovation as Americans stepped into space. And yet there were also great challenges in 1965. American combat troops landed in Vietnam. And the civil rights movement continued, but with painfully slow progress. Tennessee, America at its best, embraces both sides of the coin. We acknowledge our shortcomings, but we build on our best. And it reminds me of the truth in Scripture. Great faith is required to keep pushing for the things not yet seen. Today, our country faces challenges of a different kind, but I think now more than ever, Tennessee embodies America at its best. And in order to ensure that, I'm proposing a budget tonight and America at its best policies that reinforce freedom and innovation, exceptionalism and optimism. If we're to embody America at its best, I believe that starts with acknowledging that it is our Creator who endows us with freedom, and the government merely maintains that freedom. And I believe that now more than ever, we must show great discipline and regard for our freedoms. And one way we do that is through small government. It contributes to a safe and well-ordered society. In recent history, big government has attempted to take over society instead of contributing to it. And that's no way to live. Tennessee's pushed back on that big government. In fact, Tennessee has recently been ranked as one of the top 5 freest states in the country. Folks around the country see this, and they're moving to our state in record numbers. And they're fleeing states with rising crime and falling support for law enforcement. Bob and Darcy Armanino each served in the San Francisco Police Department for 30 years. They recently packed up everything they had and left behind everything they knew in search of, as they say, more freedom. And they moved right down the road from me. Bob and Darcy are our new California neighbors, and they represent thousands of our new neighbors. Bob and Darcy are here with us tonight, and we welcome them as new Tennesseans. Please stand and be recognized. In fact, law enforcement officials from across the country have seen Tennessee as a destination for more freedom. Just last year, we put out a call to officers from New York to LA who were facing restrictive mandates, and they responded. And we welcome these new Tennesseans are committed to keeping our neighborhoods safe. But we are also, in my budget, adding 100 additional highway patrol troopers and 50 new personnel to support the mission of the TBI. We'll also commit more than $150 million directly into law enforcement agencies across the state to create safer neighborhoods through the Violent Crime Intervention Grant Fund. And we're proposing more than $350 million new dollars that'll support a law enforcement training academy to ensure that we have the most professional force in the country. Our funding commitment to law enforcement shows a respect for the rule of law and a rejection of the defund the police movement that we've seen across this country. Both drug trafficking and human trafficking are on the rise in our country and in Tennessee, and that's unacceptable. Last Wednesday, I spoke to 50 Tennessee National Guardsmen the day before they were to deploy to the southern border to fight the flow of fentanyl that's killing Tennesseans. These men and women are deploying at a time when border chaos is at an all-time high. America desperately needs our stability, especially on the southern border. And I want to thank Lieutenant Governor McNally and Speaker Sexton for working together on this mission, as we know that it directly impacts the health and safety of our state. And we will continue our anti-human trafficking efforts as Tennessee sends a loud message that those who participate in human trafficking will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. I also believe that communities of faith are critical to the preservation of American freedom. Last year, I met with a group of Jewish leaders who expressed concern about being able to safely worship while anti-Semitism is on the rise. In fact, recently, a shock world watched as a Texas synagogue was held hostage. But the rabbi there credited the outcome to extensive safety training through partnership with local law enforcement. So I've directed the Department of Safety and Homeland Security to create a plan so that every house of worship in our state can receive high-quality safety training, and we will continue to protect Tennesseans' ability to worship freely. A strong commitment to public safety includes a wise approach to criminal justice. And I want to thank the members of the General Assembly for the criminal justice legislation that you passed last year. In fact, in the last 3 years, we've expanded educational pathways. We've ensured every inmate has a photo ID. We've increased job opportunities for inmates. Evidence clearly shows that small efforts make a large difference in public safety, and we will continue to build on that. I recently had the remarkable privilege of placing a life-changing phone call with a man who had served his time in prison and was back in society. In fact, he serves as a pastor here in Tennessee now. But he was living with many of the burdens that currently exist for those previously incarcerated. It was a call to grant clemency, but it ended up being a reminder to me that people who have served their debt to society for the mistakes that they have made can absolutely become productive, contributing citizens to the community if we will just clear a path. That man that I had the remarkable privilege of placing that phone call to was Pastor Quantel Lindsay. He and his wife Kaylee are with us here tonight, and we are honored that you would join us. Please stand and be recognized. The freedom to innovate requires a healthy balance sheet. Unfortunately, that's not something we've been seeing at the national level. The national debt recently surpassed $29 trillion. That amounts to more than $220,000 per household. We pay a staggering $900 million per day in national debt interest payments. And this is a bipartisan problem working within a broken system. But states with balanced budgets offer a guide to what could be if Washington would just act. Washington saddles our kids with trillions of dollars of debt. Tennessee's strong fiscal position allows us to instead invest on their behalf. Education, infrastructure, healthcare, economic development, all areas where we can make smart and strategic investments that most states cannot. In Tennessee, we've also prioritized efficiency. Unlike many other states, since I've taken office, our employee headcount at our departments has decreased by 5% without making layoffs. And I want to thank the members of the General Assembly for what I believe is a prudent management approach. And while some are forecasting a recession, Tennessee remains prepared with a healthy savings account and minimal liabilities. Our proposed budget will boost the rainy day fund to its highest ever, $1.6 billion. And we have the financial capacity to innovate and approach key areas like education, infrastructure, with fresh eyes. And because of that, and with the support of thousands of Tennessee families, I'm committing to updating the 30-year-old way that we fund our K-12 public schools. I am proposing an innovative approach that sets aside dollars for each student based on their individual needs. And these dollars will be used in whatever public school they attend. And we have spent months engaging parents and teachers and students and stakeholders in a fully transparent process all across this entire state. The Department of Education, members of the General Assembly, have received thousands of public comments. We've had 16 town halls from one end of the state to the other, 18 subcommittees, and I want to thank every Tennessean who's participated in these subcommittees and in these town halls This is not just hundreds of millions of dollars on the line. This is our kids and their lives, and most importantly, their futures. And time again, we've all heard the same message. We need a smarter, more transparent, accountable education funding formula. And I believe the time is now. A formula that prioritizes the needs of students above all else, and that pays particular attention to students with disabilities, and to low-income students, and to rural students, and students with other priority needs. If we do this correctly, we can create a funding formula that demands accountability, that rewards districts for performance, but most importantly, it funds students and not bureaucracies. If we do this right, then and only then can we feel confident investing the dollars that are needed for our public schools and the future of Tennessee. And therefore, in tandem with this new funding formula, I'm proposing $1 billion in new recurring education spending for our public schools across Tennessee. The proposal will be finalized in the coming days, and I look forward to working with you, the members of the General Assembly, to get this done. Now is the time. This budget also includes one-time funding to expand high school and middle school career and technical opportunities so every student can graduate with the industry certification that they need to join the workforce of tomorrow. Let me tell you what else this one-time funding will be used for. I went to Waverly, Tennessee after the devastating floods last year. The tragedy and the heartache and the loss was hard to take in. I walked into the elementary school where water rose to a level of almost 4 feet within 10 minutes of that flood. I saw desks and backpacks and books piled up against the door where the water rushed out. If the Waverly flood had happened on Friday instead of Saturday, we would be mourning the loss of hundreds of Tennessee children. So I'm proposing one-time funding to ensure that no Tennessee student attends a public school located in a flood zone. While we are improving our funding strategy, we also need to empower parents with a candid look into not only how their children are learning, but what their children are learning. The vast majority of parents believe that they should be allowed to see books and curriculum and other items used in the classroom. That's how I felt about my kids, and I stand with those parents today. So we're proposing a new law that will ensure that parents know what materials are available to their students in libraries. This law will also create accountability at the local level, so parents are empowered to make sure that content is age appropriate in the books that their children see. As we again work to make gains in elementary reading and mathematics, we're also going to work to make sure that students have options in science and technology and engineering and technical training. We'll grow our investment in the Future Workforce Initiative by $2.5 million. Make sure and propose legislation so that every high school student has access to computer science and coding classes. We're seeing steady enrollment in our colleges of applied technology when other academic disciplines are actually declining. These Tennesseans in TCAT stand ready to wire our homes and build our cars and nurse our sick back to health, and we need them on the job now, not on a TCAT wait list. And so I'm committing $200 million into TCAT expansions to help double our skilled workforce by 2026 and ensure that any Tennessean wishing to further their education can immediately enroll in a TCAT. Make no mistake, Tennessee is Working People USA, and we'll do whatever it takes to train and retrain Tennesseans so that both our families and our businesses can thrive. Now, the keepers of Working People USA have been our teachers. When companies look to Tennessee for a pipeline of skilled workers, it's teachers who are busy preparing students for life beyond the classroom. We, therefore, should raise teacher pay this year by $125 million, which is a well-deserved increase into the teacher salary pool. Now, historically, funds put into the salary pool don't always make it to deserving teachers. When we say teachers are getting a raise, there should be no bureaucratic workaround to prevent that. So in our updated funding formula, we will ensure that a teacher raise is a teacher raise. That increasing wages isn't enough to address the teacher shortage and the record number of retirements we've had. In 2020, we launched a program to get more high school seniors to pursue teaching and to even stay in the communities that raised them. Our program is called Grow Your Own, and it's now nationally recognized as a model for building a pipeline of qualified educators. It's the first time that teaching has been recognized by the federal government as an apprenticeship pathway. And that path starts right here in Tennessee. You know, the Grow Your Own model is proof that giving kids real skills and a roadmap will help solve the greatest challenges of our day. And so much of innovation, which we talked about, is doing research and committing to reaching full potential. At the higher education level, we're investing $90 million in our nationally highlighted outcomes-based funding formula. With this level of funding, I would expect zero tuition increases for our public universities. And we're also proud to propose a series of research investments to ensure that we stay on track to remain America at its best. Recently, the University of Memphis received a Carnegie R1 designation, making it a top-tier school for research. In fact, we will now have what's known as an R1 institution in each Grand Division. We're proposing $50 million toward a research endowment to propel work that will make Memphis a global leader in agri-tech, cybersecurity, and digital workforce. And meeting our full potential also means being home to some of the best historically black colleges and universities in the country. Back in November 2020, the speakers appointed a joint land grant committee chaired by Representative Harold Love to explore how the state can better understand the new needs of Tennessee State University. Today, I'm recommending a $250 million investment to improve the physical infrastructure at TSU. Just to be clear, that was to improve the physical infrastructure at TSU. I appreciate your enthusiasm. Our commitment to innovation will continue right on to the Oak Ridge Corridor, where we'll be investing $70 million to complete the Oak Ridge Innovation Institute, which is a partnership with the University of Tennessee. For decades, East Tennessee's been home to some of the best kept secrets in nuclear energy and American innovation. Today, many may not realize that Tennessee derives more of its power from nuclear energy than any other source. Recently, I visited the Watts Bar nuclear facility, the last nuclear facility to be built in America, to see just firsthand how nuclear power keeps our grid dependable even when the weather and other states' grids are not. Nuclear power is clean energy that actually works for the private sector. It's enabled us to land major economic projects because it's not only clean, but it's also cheap to produce. Tennessee's expanded nuclear potential rests at the Clinch River site as one of the few undeveloped yet already certified nuclear sites in the country. So we're working directly with TVA to formalize a long-term strategy so the Clinch River site can be part of powering America. If you're going to have a real conversation about energy in America, it needs to be safe. It needs to be cheap to produce. It needs to be reliable. And I believe that that conversation can start right here in Tennessee at the Clinch River site. Our state, thankfully, is one of the fastest growing states in the country. And we have an obligation to future generations to invest in our roads and our bridges to accommodate that growth. My budget proposes accelerating the IMPROVE Act by allocating $100 million to ensure progress on critical projects. I'm also proposing more than $170 million toward interchange improvements in 12 counties across the state that'll propel economic growth in rural areas. If you want to know what's right about America, you got to look at rural Tennessee. I'm also proposing more than $250 million toward road infrastructure projects in the fastest growing counties in our state. All told, these will amount to more than $600 million additional dollars invested in roads and bridges over and above what was already in place, and that's what meeting our obligation to the future looks like. Earlier, I mentioned that Tennesseans are what makes our state exceptional. I recently watched President Reagan's farewell address that he made just before he left office in January 1989. And as most presidents have done, his farewell address includes a warning to the American people. He reminds us that what we want to have in this country is informed patriotism, And then speaking about American history, he says, if we forget what we did, we won't know who we are. He said, I'm warning of an eradication of the American memory that could result ultimately in an erosion of the American spirit. But he offered a solution by saying, let's start with some basics, more attention to American history and a greater emphasis on civic ritual. Some 30 years later, these words are still true, and now more than ever, it's important that we teach true American history, unbiased and non-political. 2 years ago, we launched the Governor's Civics Seal program, which included grants to support schools that were implementing high-quality civics education programs. Since then, we've nearly tripled the size of that program, and thousands of Tennessee students have received this education. We expect the opportunity to grow. The Fordham Institute recently ranked us as one of the top 5 states for civics education. I'm proud of the informed patriots that are graduating from our Tennessee schools, but there's still more to be done, especially if we want to provide Tennessee parents with more educational choices. 2 years ago, I traveled to Hillsdale College, where I participated in a President's Day celebration and spent time with what I believe are champions of American exceptionalism. For decades, Hillsdale College has been a standard bearer in quality curriculum and in the responsibility of preserving American liberty. I believe their efforts are a good fit for Tennessee, and we are formalizing a partnership with Hillsdale to expand their approach to civics education and K-12 education in Tennessee. Informed patriotism should stretch beyond K-12 and into higher education. In many states, colleges and universities have become centers of anti-American thought, leaving students not only ill-equipped, but confused. But in Tennessee, there is no reason why our institutions of higher learning can't be an exceptional part of America at its best. So I'm including in my budget $6 million to establish the Institute of American Civics at the University of Tennessee. This will be a flagship for the nation, a beacon celebrating intellectual diversity at our universities and teaching how responsible and civic-minded people strengthens our communities and strengthens our country. Our universities not only face internal threats, but are facing very real external threats as well, as foreign powers target them to steal or influence American research. The federal government estimates more than $225 billion worth of intellectual property is stolen every year from China, and much of it at institutions of higher learning. Last year, we shut down Confucius Institutes in our public Tennessee universities to cut ties with an organization that's working for the Chinese party. The state of Tennessee has to remain vigilant with regard to countries and foreign entities who do not have our best interest in mind. So our administration is strengthening our vetting approach to ensure that we do not spend state dollars or incentivize any company doing the work of foreign adversaries. And we're doing this to protect our Tennessee economy, our taxpayer dollars, and our American security. Now, our state will be and continue to be a destination for other global companies who are honest brokers, and we welcome them to the table. Good faith partnership is core to the American spirit. And while we welcome foreign investment, we also welcome individuals from other countries who've legally made America home. And that's something we should always value. It's been said that Americans by birth should spend time with Americans by choice from time to time to help remind us all of how exceptional our country is. An American by choice who has impacted me is Rocky Ghazi. He is a Kurdish refugee from Iraq and a proud American citizen by choice. And he also serves our state as a trooper in the Tennessee Highway Patrol. Rocky and his wife Jihan are with us here tonight, and we are proud that you have chosen to call Tennessee home. Please stand and be recognized, Rocky. Tennessee fulfills America at its best because of our optimism, in part, optimism that our best days are ahead of us and that we can be the best state for families to form and to thrive. And my office has proposed and supported some of the soundest pro-life legislation in the country. And thanks to our partners in the legislature, we passed thoughtful laws that protected the unborn and supported expecting mothers. If the federal courts return full authority to the states, Tennessee's laws will automatically provide the maximum possible protection and offer a glimmer of redemption as America reconciles our troubled past. And I believe Tennessee can be a major part of that reconciliation by offering both hope and resources to families in crisis. And this begins with mothers, continuing big investments in their health. TennCare's Health Starts initiative will now have the funding to put an even greater emphasis on maternal health and holistic care for mothers and children. And our support for families will continue through Tennessee Fosters Hope, where we've certified new foster families and offered trauma training statewide, recruited foster-friendly businesses, and moved many children into forever homes. To continue the support for foster families, I'm proposing funding relative caregiver placements, which will allow extended families to keep loved ones close by. And we're also proposing a child care support program for all foster families, regardless of their DHS eligibility. And you can't be the best state for families unless you're the best state for all families. And I believe that we have still significant work to do in improving access to health care for Tennessee families. But because of our prudent fiscal management, we're making huge investments in rural health care in this budget. And that means actual care, not just keeping a hospital open. We need qualified, dedicated physicians and staff in rural areas. So we're dedicating more than $18 million to attract 150 new primary care residents for rural Tennessee. Because of the block grant waiver program that you passed and that we now have confidence in, we are now able to make significant investments in healthcare. Additionally, including $55 million into our Medicaid Pathways to Independence program. And this simply means more benefits and smarter spending on behalf of our TennCare population. We're also dramatically expanding dental care to more than 600,000 TennCare recipients through a These 600 recipients will receive this care through a $25 million investment. And we're also working on a multi-year commitment to broaden dental services all across the state. Regarding health care, it's no secret that the opioid epidemic has ravaged many of our communities all across Tennessee and continues to do so. Therefore, we are increasing our investment to support addiction recovery through mobile units and improved walk-in care from one end of the state to the other. In spite of the tremendous work that is being done and the challenge that this opioid epidemic is to us today, we're actually at a hopeful moment, thanks to a tireless fighter who serves our state. Our Attorney General, Herbert Sladery, has worked to ensure that every county in Tennessee is entitled to its part of the $26 billion suit against pharmaceutical companies who fueled the opioid tragedy in this state. I got to brag on you just a little bit more, Herbert. He's a national leader. As you know, he was recently selected by his peers as the best attorney general in America. And yes, stand up, please. From education to infrastructure, economic development to healthcare, I believe that this budget is bold and it's balanced. Most importantly, it doesn't ask Tennesseans to pay one more penny in taxes. Members of the General Assembly, the state of our state is strong, and I look forward to working with you to make it stronger yet. Tennessee is, in fact, a beacon for America, a harbinger of opportunity and security and freedom. We are the reminder of what can be but is not yet. Very much like the formation of a more perfect union. Every child doesn't yet have access to a high-quality education. Every neighborhood is not yet safe. Every family does not yet have opportunity. But what I know is this: every single member of the Tennessee General Assembly, every court justice, every constitutional officer, and this governor knows that if anybody can do it, Tennessee can. You know, in 1 Chronicles, Scripture describes the leaders of ancient Israel at a particular time in their history. And these leaders are described as ones who understood their times and they knew what they should do. May we be those leaders. And may we ensure that the beacon that is Tennessee, America at its best, shines brighter than ever before. May the Lord grant his favor upon the great state of Tennessee. Thank you very much. Thank you.